You are listening to the More Life podcast.
More Life Podcast.
More life.
More life. This is
the More Life podcast.
Hi everyone.
Hello,
Welcome
hello.
back to More Life for the final episode. I've been teasing and saying it's the final episode for 2023, but it's actually the last episode of all time.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
It's cool. I think it's time, even though I feel like there's a lot of stuff I haven't gotten to. So this is a more life in nature, which is something that I really wanted to do and find like different spots across where I live, or like, you know, just cool spaces in nature, and actually have a podcast there. And that's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So there's a lot of ideas like that I haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
So a lot of it feels like it's an early finish, but at the same time, because I'm going on to all this other stuff, it just makes sense that it's time to wrap up. But yeah.
So what made you want to wrap it up now?
Probably that idea of having a lot more on my plate. So I'm moving interstate, which is a big thing. And yeah, I guess a big part of that is knowing that I'll have all these other commitments and things that I need to work on, and I don't want to have to keep up with more life.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that it took forever to start is because I didn't want to start and not do it well, which is, I know, is a very perfectionist thing. So it took so long to start, and I'm in a position now where I don't want to do it half-heartedly, especially because it's been so special to me, I guess. So I don't want to, you know, have it end up being a chore and a burden and that sort of thing. So
that's what I was going to say. Anyways, like if you want to do something, you want to do it right, you want to do it 100%. So
yeah, exactly.
I was going to say, is this a secret location, or are you telling people
actually,
where we are?
Yeah, no, it's actually where it all started. So obviously the idea was brewing for a while. I had all these thoughts. And then when I thought of the more life concept, what represented life for me was plants and flowers, which is why it's on the artwork. And a lot of the videos I have plants in the background. So when we first started, I found a photographer, found a friend, and then we came out here to the botanical gardens in Mount Coot-tha and did a photo shoot for the cover. And I actually took a lot more photos that I never posted and that I still have. But yeah, I just thought it'd be cool to come back here as the first More Life in Nature. There's a lot of cool spots here.
It's very cool. I feel like it's nice to be out here. It's my first time, but it's very peaceful.
Yeah.
Very nice.
The one thing about More Life in Nature, though, if it did eventuate, is the bugs.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a fan of bugs, and I'm already like twitching every so often. I feel someone touch me.
I thought there was going to be something that would fall on me.
Yeah.
And I feel like every single year I get pooped on by a bird at least 3 times.
Apparently it's good luck.
Yeah, but so I always look up before I sit anywhere.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm like, not today.
You know the intro, that the most recent intro, that's like, you're listening to the More Life podcast, More Life podcast, More Life, More Life.
Yeah.
This is the More Life podcast. It was this thing where I started, when I first did the first ever episode, I asked everyone to record that, like saying
Them
that,
saying More
but I
Life.
actually didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't think it was going to look like that. And then I was finishing off radio, and I was like, oh, like I want some sort of radio vibe. Like, what can I do? And so I just put it in with those sound effects and that extra stuff on it, which was really cool.
So it's come out a lot different to what you expected, or you just didn't? Why were you collating it?
I don't know. I think I've come up with like things where I'm like, this could fit in somewhere, and then I do it and then I put it in.
Yeah.
And that's been the really cool thing for More Life. It's just been a way for me to have that creative expression, because I think I spoke about it in some episode, because I work in healthcare and I do like academics. Obviously, I'm going to be a doctor soon, so everything I do is very much like logical focus, like do that sort of thing. And I also love creativity, so I feel like More Life was just one of the ways where I could be like, just fully get into creativity.
Yeah, your creative expression.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so much that I'm like, oh, they do this and do that and do whatever. But yeah.
So obviously you're saying that there's different locations that you wanted to have More Life. Are there any other ideas you've had that you want to bring life?
Wow, just get everyone to snatch up the ideas as I leave.
Okay, no, you don't have to say.
No, I'm joking. So this was one of them. One of them was a lake as well. The other one was the beach, and I was actually thinking about how that would work with the sound of the beach. And then just like different things, like I was like thinking of, you know, those big trees where there's like a swing set underneath, like hung onto the tree, so something like that. Like, nice. Yeah, just really cool stuff.
So the aesthetics and the sounds.
Yeah, just the vibe of like, we're out here, we're enjoying nature, enjoying life.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's
It's
cool. Do you think the podcast has turned out how you expected it to? Better, worse?
It's been so much cooler than I thought, because you would have heard this even when I was thinking about it. I was like, you know what, I just have good conversations with people, and I just want to be able to record it and sit down and capture those moments for life. And I was like, it would be cool if other people listen in, like, you know, a couple of views, I don't mind. But now it's like, what, over 1.5k views and listens. What is it, 1,700 something? Not 1,900 something? I don't know. Anyway, but yeah, having all that, all those people, I'm like, that's a lot of time to be spending with me in your ears. But it's been like a testament to the guests I've had on, I think.
I think so.
It's like, I really wanted it to be a community. Once I got into it, and I was like, oh, actually, this doesn't just have to be a recorded conversation with a friend. I was like, community is what I'm looking at. Yeah, the guests that I've had have been like essential to bringing people in, because it's like, I share their story, someone knows knows them, and, you know, wants to connect with that, and then like it just sort of spreads on from there. So that's been really cool, I think.
No, that's cool. I feel like it's definitely come up quite a few times in different conversations where people are like, oh, your sister does this, oh, your sister's podcast, this and that. And I think, like you were saying before, in terms of your expectations for it, it's almost like, I know for me, I imagine whoever's been interacting with your content, whether it's, I don't know, 20 or 30, it's like, imagine 30 people standing there giving you their time.
Exactly.
Everything is a privilege and honor, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Because especially, like, I'm sure you felt this recently, because you've also just, you know, completed study. Like, time is such a big thing, like the amount of time that you spend with people. So yeah, for me, definitely, like, some people might be like, oh, I'm just going to put on a podcast and listen to it. But for me, I'm like, wow, like, I can't believe you'd actually take time out of your day just to, you know, have these, join a conversation. I've never taken it as listen to a podcast. It's always been joining a conversation.
That's good.
Because a lot of the conversations have carried on outside of, outside of just the podcast. I'll catch up with people and they're like, oh, I listened to this episode and blah, blah. Like, and then they go more into something, which has been cool.
That's good. So here's some questions from Instagram. So the first one is, what was your favorite episode and why?
You know how, like, especially celebrities, they're like, oh, no, I couldn't possibly have this favorite. Well, I'm actually the same, to be honest. Because I think there's different things I like about all of them. Like, I think the episodes with our family, those are really cool, just to, you know, it's almost like formalizing our relationship, where it's like you have these questions about, you know, who's the closest, who's whatever. It's like a way of really defining stuff. Even with mommy and daddy as well. That one, actually, a lot of people really liked it.
That's cool.
Interesting fact about that family episode, a lady saw it and she came up to me and she was like, she said, like, would you mind doing that for other families? Like, sitting other families down and, like, facilitating the conversation between them. And that's another more like thing that I'm like, oh my goodness, like, that would be so cool to do. My first episode, that was just really cool, because it was like, I got the setup ready. I invited Paul and Nick over, had the setup. It was really cool seeing it sort of come to life.
I remember that episode, actually. I feel like it was one of the very first ones, like you said, and just having different people who obviously we're friends with, but inviting them into our home. And even just conversations afterwards. It was very, very good time. I think I'd just woken up and then you guys had just finished filming it. But
and also, I feel like it's really interesting with the podcast, and I realized, like, it's sort of connected to that episode. There's so much that I've had to learn, like cameras cutting out, and this doesn't actually work. This microphone can't be set up like this, and this can't be whatever. That
was going to be one of my questions. What are the biggest things you've learned from the podcast? What are, let's say, break it down to 3 big lessons.
3 big lessons. It's okay. So the first one I'd probably say is know your setup. Like, it is important to actually know what things are going to look like. You can sort of like wing it when you get there. The most recent episode on adoption, which another episode that I really liked, you asked me about favorite episodes. I love all of them, but what I really liked about that one is just having such a raw and open conversation on a topic that I haven't seen discussed in normal platforms. Like, in adoption spaces, it's always there, but on a normal platform like that, I haven't seen it before. What but yeah, in that episode, or for that episode, I sort of got in and the setup was different to what I expected it to be. And so it was like, oh, okay. So I spent quite a lot of time with help from my guests, like rearranging stuff and all that sort of stuff. So first thing I've learned is probably know your setup, know your equipment. Second big thing I've learned in the podcast is I think I've just grown skills in talking to people and interviewing. That's and good. It's quite interesting because someone asked me if I've had training or media training, and I haven't had any of that before.
Yeah.
Like, I think the reason it's come so easy is because I've always been curious about people. So I'll ask questions in a normal conversation. I think you said at one time, you're like, I just think you think too deeply about stuff. So like someone will say something like, huh.
Yeah.
And what does that mean to you?
I honestly think it could be a girl thing where it's like the little details where I'm like, for me, I wouldn't think about those little itty bitty details, but for some people, it feels like you have to piece everything together and ask about all that.
Yeah, so I think that's probably my second lesson has been really just learning how to sit with people and facilitate a conversation, despite the fact that I was already doing it normally. And then my third thing on the back of all that is just keep it moving. Like, I remember after my first one, I was like so frustrated about the video cutting out. Second one, like just everything where I'm like, oh, all these things went wrong, and you get so frustrated, but just keep it moving, man. Like,
nice.
Put it together, do what you got to do. Once it's out there, like, just let it go. And I think that ability to let it go has been really big in terms of creating content, because you can't control people's reactions to what you have. And someone will be like, someone could look at something and be like, oh, I don't like that video, I don't like that edit, I don't like those graphics, I don't like that sound, I don't like what you're talking about, that sort of thing. But yeah, like with content creation, you just put something out and
crazy thing is the camera can't see it because it's too far out.
There's a bush turkey walking in front of us. Oh, is it
going
to peck at my laptop? Sure, just leave him be. It'll be fine. He'll be fine. He was looking at my laptop. I think you can probably hear.
I'm gonna let it do its thing and watch it peck your computer and scratch it.
Okay, sorry. I'm gonna need to get away from my laptop.
You said let it be.
No,
you said let it be
because it was walking away.
It was actually walking towards it.
Okay.
I think Tim Ross was saying, in terms of interviewing, it's very important who's interviewing certain people, because when you're asking people, and that's probably what he's realized, if you have such an idea of, oh, I know this person and this is exactly what story I want to come out, then you're going to be directing the conversation in certain directions where, I guess for him, and it being a Christian podcast where the Holy Spirit wants to lead it, or just in general where it could end up going, you're less flexible to it when you have this set idea that you really want to go for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get that.
Another question for me then, from me, is what advice would you give to somebody who is wanting to start something new but is feeling apprehensive? So for you it was a podcast, but let's say for someone just wanting to step out of their comfort zone, do something different to their day-to-day life.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, one of the cool things that came out of More Life was the ability to speak to bigger groups of people. So particularly working with an organization called Y-Lead. So I spoke to high school students on 2 occasions at 2 conferences. And then from that, I also ended up speaking at schools as well, which has been really cool. So I managed to put this together. And one of the things I spoke about, it's like 3 things that I came up with. So firstly was know your why, because if you are doing something because you want views or because you want this, or, like there's certain, and I mean, that's fine, but there's certain things that will not be enough to motivate you when it's time to actually get the work done. So if you have a deeper purpose for stuff, then you can actually, it motivates you through it and actually motivates you to start it. My second thing was know the details but don't get stuck on them. So you actually do need to get a camera. You actually, if you're a writer, you actually do need to get writing materials. If you're a painter, you actually do need to sort out a canvas. But don't get stuck on them. So that was my thing, where I was like, oh, but like my camera's not good enough and this isn't good enough. So I didn't want to get stuck on stuff. So know your details, but don't get stuck on them. And then my last one was think fast. And like with the high school kids, I'd always be like, okay, everyone say think fast, say it faster, and like think fast, because think fast was like when something goes wrong, like just reevaluate. And FAST was an acronym. Let me go backwards. So if the idea didn't work or things went wrong, was it the wrong time for it? S was it the wrong skills? A was it the wrong? I even forgot. Yeah, I remember F and A are right now. But yeah, so there's a different acronyms of what could have gone wrong and how can you change it as well. So yeah.
So constantly self-reflecting and going through it. I think that's something that uni taught me, as everyone knows the different reflection that you have to go through. And my first few years of uni, I thought it was just useless. But then by the end, I realized how important it would be, because it just allows you to really solidify and almost like put together your thoughts as to the experience that you had, whether it was a placement or an assignment, and really almost tie it together into a knot. And then when you go back to tell people, it's like you remember all these summaries, and even as written summaries, like I can send that to people or whatever it might be. But yeah, and so with that as well, you said that those are the steps that you were wanting to take towards starting something new. How do you think you build confidence? So is it something that comes with time? Is there anything that you think you've been able to do to fast track it?
Yeah, for sure. I love the way you've weaved some of those Instagram questions in. How do I think you build confidence? I think once you get better at whatever it is you're doing, and better, not meaning better than anyone else or the best in the game, but within yourself, once you feel like you're improving, you actually gain confidence. Because it's like, for example, even this setup that we did, for More Life in Nature, like I know how the camera works, I know how this works. So you sort of get that confidence, get there, sit down, you do what you do. And I think that applies in any area of life. It doesn't have to be a creative pursuit. So I think one of the things I was talking to someone about was my current job as a physio, where I was like, I felt like, okay, I've got this sort of flow happening, because it's like I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm not a baby physio anymore. I'm also not the expert, and there's always new stuff coming out. But because I've been in my role, I know what's coming. I sort of have this confidence every time I go to work.
100%.
This confidence, even if it's a new person, new condition, I have this element of confidence of, okay, I know my processes. I know how to reevaluate that sort of thing. So,
No, that's good. I think of that with basketball as well, where it's like you have to get reps up to build a certain amount of confidence. And even in university, like you're saying, you can read the textbook a million times, you can read the steps and watch the lectures on how to complete a certain procedure, but until you've done it a couple of times, you may not necessarily have it as well. So sometimes you do have to just put yourself through it, go through it a few times, make your mistakes and learn from them. And put yourself in that sense. All right, so somebody says, let's collab.
Collabs is one of the things that I really thought I would do a lot of. Like I have even when it comes to guest topics, everything, I have an entire spreadsheet and document of like guests, titles, topics, collabs, like all that sort of stuff, collaborations. And that's one of the things that I wish I did more of, or would have had the capacity to do more of, but there's just so much that I wanted to do. So I would say yes. Obviously now that we're wrapping up, I can't say yes. And I actually did have collaborations in the works. So there's a few people where, we've even gotten to the stage of planning dates. Someone where we'd gotten to the stage of looking at setups and, artwork and all that sort of stuff, how it was all going to work out. And then a lot of stuff sort of fizzled out, which, I don't really hold on to things that didn't happen. I think I've learnt so much, especially in the past year, of like how a lot of things that initially you take as a frustration or an annoyance or something that might be just sad or disappointing, like it just pivots you towards everything that's better. So I think whenever, it's actually quite weird, whenever doors have closed for me, like recently, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, cool, something better is coming along. So not to say that the people I was collaborating with, great already, but maybe just wouldn't have been the right fit for me or for them. So
no, that's nice.
Cool.
So you ask all your guests on your show what More Life means to them. So I think we should end the episode, or the final episode of More Life, by asking you, what does More Life mean to you?
Oh man, it's such a bittersweet sort of conclusion, because even when I started the podcast, it was like, More Life means a life of blessings, abundance, and all the wonderful things about life. And so I think I still stand by that, a life of blessings. But for me, More Life just really means, it's really meant peace a lot for me. So just being at peace with the way things turn out, even those pivots, like I said before, when things in life pivot you around, just being comfortable in that decision. keeping it moving, like I
Yeah.
mentioned before as well. More life has also meant growth,
Okay.
and growth in terms of knowledge, and growth in terms of like your sense of being, like who you are, and that sort of thing. So I think all of those things have just helped me recently, but help people, you know, when you hear other people's stories, live a more abundant and fulfilling life.
I know, that's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Well, thank you for having me. It's been nice to be on the podcast again.
Yeah.
It's a very nice location, and I hope, you know, you may have another future in podcasting, whether it's a different one or More Life comes back once you have more time.
Yeah, for sure. I think More Life, like, it's definitely not the end of More Life. I know it'll be here still, and it's definitely, might take a different look. And I think More Life as a podcast could come back in the future. But yeah, for now though, it is goodbye. So thank you so much for tuning in over the years. It has been years now. 2 years, but still plural. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, and just for your love and support and everything. So, you know, everyone who's come up and said, you know, said something about the pod, or even just watching a video, watching a reel, following on Instagram, and asking about it, and I guess getting to know that it's just something that I've really cared about. So I've really appreciated you viewing and listening. And yeah, thanks for interviewing me, Vusa.
No worries at all.
Bye everyone. More
See you
love
later.
and more life to you. Bye.